Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Ahmed Wael Ibrahim. Inshallah, we're going to talk about the white matter of cerebral hemispheres. It's really easy, it's really fun. We have lots and lots of diagrams to help understand and to help envision whatever it is that we'll be talking about. And hopefully, you're going to find it easy enough to learn and to memorize and to clear any confusion that was there. White matter of the cerebral hemispheres is divided into association fibers, projection fibers, and commissural fibers. I have to learn the definition of each. What's the difference between each one? They're all white matter, but they are different than one another. And then we're gonna learn the different examples that we have in the cerebral hemisphere. We start with the association fibers. They are fibers in the different regions of the same cerebral hemispheres, and they connect different regions together. For example, we have short association fibers and we have long association fibers. The short and the long both connect two structures present in the same hemisphere. However, the short association fibers connect structures within the same lobe. For example, frontal lobe sends short commissural fibers to a part in the same ipsilateral frontal lobe. Yani, in short, to itself. So what type of white matter will that be? It will be an association fiber, and it will be a short association fiber. And here's an example of what a short association fiber looks like. Long association fibers are like the short association fibers. They connect structures in the same hemisphere but in different lobes. For example, we have here the superior longitudinal bundle. It connects the frontal lobe with the temporal lobe and the occipital lobe. We have an inferior longitudinal bundle which connects the occipital lobe with the temporal lobe, or the temporal lobe with the occipital lobe. We also have another one called the fronto-occipital bundle, which connects the frontal to the temporal and occipital, just like the superior, but it lies at a deeper level, lies below or deep to the superior longitudinal bundle. Then we have something called the Inuncinate bundle, which connects, as you can see here, Broca's area, which is present in the frontal lobe, with Wernicke's area or Wernicke's area, which is in the temporal lobe, and it forms a sort of an arch around the lateral sulcus. Now, this diagram isn't exactly correct. The fibers are supposed to come and converge around, make a U-turn, and from the Broca's in frontal to Wernicke's in temporal lobe. So as you can see, it's very easy. It's really not complicated. Last but not least of the long association fibers is the cingulum. And the cingulum connects the cingulate gyrus to the parahippocampal gyrus. Now, we spoke of the cingulum earlier in the limbic system as part of the connecting pathways that make up the limbic system. As you all know, the limbic system is made up of cortical, subcortical structures and connecting pathways, and one of them was the cingulum. It connects the and here it connects the cingulate gyrus, which is this one, to the hippocampal to the parahippocampal gyrus, which in turn is going to connect itself to the hippocampal gyrus. So as you can see, that was it for association fibers. Really easy. To sum it up, they connect different regions in the same hemisphere. If it's the same lobe sending to itself, then we call it short association fibers. If it's a lobe sending to another lobe, for example, frontal to temporal and occipital, we call it long association fiber. And there are 5 types: superior longitudinal bundle, inferior longitudinal bundle, frontopontine, uncinate, and the cingulum. Next, we have projection fibers, and projection fibers are different from association fibers, and they're also similar. What are they similar in? They are both white matter fibers. But projection fibers include fibers that connect the cerebral cortex with lower centers, like the diencephalon, like the brainstem, and the spinal cord. And these include the corona radiata and the internal capsule. And since it connects the cerebral cortex with the lower center, it's going to be either ascending, such as sensations or feedback, um, and it's going to be descending, like the motor or the pyramidal tracts. And as we said, projection fibers contain the corona radiata and the internal capsule. In our book, we only talk about the internal capsule, and as you all know, this is right here is the internal capsule. This is the anterior limb, this is the genoa, and this is the posterior limb. Now, it is really, really, really complicated. If you read it from the book, it's very confusing what's in the internal capsule, because different types of pathways are going to arise, are going to ascend and descend in the internal capsule. So what I made up is a small diagram over here to summarize the different fibers ascending and descending in the internal capsule. We divide the internal capsule into anterior limb, genoa, posterior limb, and the retrolentiform and the sublentiform part. Now we have four main types of fibers running in the internal capsule, whether ascending or descending. We have the pontine fibers, which are going to be circular. We have the corticofibers, which are going to be corticonuclear, corticospinal, corticoruberal. The pontine are going to be frontopontine, temporal-pontine, parietal-pontine, and from its name you can know that frontopontine means from the frontal lobe to the pons, temporal-pontine from the temporal lobe to the pons, and so on. We have the two different radiations, which are the optic radiation and the auditory radiation, which are symboled by an X. Then we have thalamic radiations, which are the anterior thalamic radiation and the superior thalamic radiation. So in short, the anterior limb of the internal capsule, what passes through the anterior limb of the internal capsule are the frontopontine fibers and the anterior thalamic radiation. The genoa only contains corticonuclear fibers, which is the pyramidal tract that's going to end on the cranial nerve nuclei in the brainstem, in different parts of the brainstem. Posterior limb contains, again, frontopontine fibers, this one right here, and also corticospinal and corticoruberal fibers, and finally the superior thalamic radiation. In the retrolentiform part, we have the optic radiation, the parietal and the occipitopontine fibers. In the auditory, in the sublentiform part, we have auditory radiation, parieto-pontine, and temporopontine. So again, it's very easy. You can memorize it in 100 different ways. Circles are pontine or X-pontine. Squares are cortico-X. The X's are the different radiations, and the triangles are the thalamic radiations. Genoa only contains corticonuclear. The optic radiation and the auditory radiation lie in the retrolentiform and the sublentiform part. And, well, if I were you, just print this out and put it by your door in your room and keep looking at it for a day or two, and it's gonna be, it's gonna stick in your head. Alright, next is the blood supply of internal capsule. It's really, 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 really important. Because it's related to lesions, and it's clinically very important, and it's perhaps the most important part of today's lesson is the blood supply of the internal capsule. Now we divide the internal capsule, as we've seen earlier, into an anterior limb, a genoa, and the posterior limb, retrolentiform and a sublentiform part. The anterior parts, or the upper parts of the anterior of the upper half of the anterior limb and the upper half of the posterior limb are both supplied by the middle cerebral artery, symbol red. The rest of the anterior limb is supplied by branches of the anterior cerebral artery. Again, sorry, this is middle cerebral artery, the red right here. It supplies the upper half of the anterior limb of the internal capsule and the upper half of the posterior limb of internal capsule. They're both supplied by branches of the middle cerebral artery. The anterior cerebral artery supplies the rest of the anterior limb and the geno. The lower half of this is lower. The lower half of the posterior limb is supplied by branches of the posterior choroidal artery and the anterior choroidal artery. Posterior communicating, sorry, this is a mistake here. Posterior communicating artery. I hope I can cross it out. Nope. Okay. The black one is posterior communicating artery, and this is anterior choroidal artery. I'm gonna post it in a photo to fix this back. Finally, the retrolentiform and sublentiform are both supplied by the anterior choroidal artery. So again, if I asked what supplies the geno, the answer is anterior cerebral artery. Okay, what supplies the posterior limb? Well, we have the upper half and we have the lower half. The upper half is by the middle cerebral artery, and the lower half is by posterior communicating artery and anterior choroidal artery. And there you go. It's that very easy. Nothing can be easier than that. Of course, the lesion is very important of the internal capsule because it has all the fibers that are ascending or descending. So whatever vascular lesion that occurs in one of the arteries that we just stated is going to cause a certain type of motor and sensory loss, which is not discussed in detail in our book, unfortunately. Finally, we talk about the commissural fibers. We spoke of association fibers which connect structures within the same hemisphere. We spoke of and we saw the different projection fibers, and projection, it's really obvious from the name itself, projection from higher centers to lower centers, or lower centers to the cerebral hemisphere. Finally, we have the commissural fibers, which are just like the association fibers, but they connect parts, corresponding parts in the right and left hemispheres. Okay, and this is really what they look like. This is a 3D diagram of the corpus callosum, which is the most important and most famous example of a commissural fiber, which connects the two right and left hemispheres, two corresponding parts together. It is a very large commissure, as we can see here, this purple one right here. It is a very large commissure, and it is formed of 5 different parts. Hold on while I get the 5 different parts. Yes. A rostrum, a geno, a body, tapetum, and a splenium. Again, rostrum, geno, body, tapetum, splenium. And different parts are going to connect different lobes together. Rostrum, very small, connects the 2 frontal lobes, or the orbital surfaces, which is the under surface of the 2 frontal lobes. Geno is going to connect the medial and lateral surface of the 2 frontal lobes. So the rostrum and geno are both connecting the 2 opposite frontal lobes. Rostrum is going to connect the orbital part, and splenium and geno is going to connect the medial and lateral surfaces. Then we have the body, which is the biggest part, and it connects, honestly, the rest of the lobes, starting with the parietal, then temporal, and occipital lobe. Also, its fibers intersect with the corona radiata. Corona radiata are actually a type of projection fibers that ascends in like a radiation type of manner. It's not explained in detail, but I would love to explain it to those who want to um, later on. Finally, we have the tapetum and splenium. The tapetum is the posterior part of the body, and it forms a roof and lateral wall um, to the posterior wall of the lateral ventricle, as we can guess in this image. And the splenium forms something we call the forceps major, and both of them were explained. This is what it looks like. This is the posterior horn of lateral ventricle. Both were explained in the brain transfer section in the basal ganglia video, so might want to check it out if it's confusing. So that was the most famous type of commissure, the corpus callosum. Again, rostrum, geno, body, splenium, tapetum, then splenium, rostrum and geno, frontal lobe, orbital surface, the medial and lateral surface, the body, the rest of the lobes, and except the limbic lobe, of course, it has its own connection, which is the fornix, which is also a type of commissure that we're going to discuss. Next we have is the anterior, posterior, and habenular commissure. They're really easy, and it's all about the diagrams, really. The anterior commissure, it lies in the lamina terminalis, as we can see here, anterior to the column of fornix. This is the column of fornix right here. It splits into an anterior and a posterior bundle. The anterior bundle connects the anterior perforated substance and the olfactory tracts, while the posterior one connects the temporal gyri. So the temporal is involved in is connected by the body of the corpus callosum and by the anterior commissure. Posterior commissure is present in the lower lamina of the pineal stalk, as we can see here. This is the pineal stalk, and this is the upper lamina. This is the lower lamina. Here is the posterior commissure. It connects the right and left pretectal nuclei, the superior colliculi, and the medial longitudinal bundle, or I think, yes, the medial longitudinal bundle. Now, since I am talking with the smartest medical students, what do you think this commissure is related to? Something we studied in physiology, and we will study in anatomy, neuroanatomy, some of us already have. This very commissure connects the right and left pretectal, superior colliculi, and medial longitudinal bundle, so it must be involved in the bilateral visual reflexes, like the accommodation reflex and like the light reflex. So a lesion here is going to affect these reflexes, and that's probably how we found out, or how we discovered the function of this commissure. So it's very important to correlate the different things you are studying to understand. Also, the anterior commissure, and I mentioned this in the limbic system, but I mentioned that we're going to talk about it, but we didn't really talk about it then. The anterior commissure, as we can see, connects the temporal gyrus by its posterior bundle, and with the anterior bundle connects the olfactory tracts and the anterior perforated substance. So it must be why smell and memory are related. Smell from the olfactory tracts and memory in the temporal gyrus. So that's something interesting that I thought I'd share with you. Then we have the habenular commissure, and it lies in the upper end of the pineal stalk. So we have the anterior commissure, which is the lower, which is in the lamina terminalis, splits into anterior bundle and posterior bundle. Posterior commissure is in the lower lamina of the pineal stalk, and in the upper lamina is the habenular commissure, which connects into adjacent right and left habenular nuclei. And this here is forceps minor, forceps major, and the relation to the lateral ventricle. This is again another view. I think this is a coronal section. Again, this is posterior commissure, habenular, and anterior commissure. Finally, the fornix. I'm gonna bring this diagram, then we can go back to this one. So, as I've stated earlier in the limbic system, 2 videos ago, we have something we call the fornix, which connects the posterior or hippocampal commissure really, which is part of the fornix because the fornix is big. It has anterior columns, it has body, it has cross or posterior columns. Um, but basically, it connects the right and left hippocampus together. So the fornix itself, if we talk about it in C-shaped manner, connects the hippocampus to the mammillary body. This is part of the Pepys circuit or Pepys circuit, Pepys circuit. At the same time, the right and left hippocampus are connected together by the posterior columns or the crura of the fornix by commissural fibers present here. So that this is another view right here of the fornix. Again, this is a coronal section. It's very complicated. Okay, so we discussed the types of white fibers in the cerebral hemispheres. I think it's hard to miss now that we've understood the different parts. The most important is the projection fibers, the internal capsule. It is guaranteed that many questions are going to be concerning this very particular part. The others are very easy. Corpus callosum is very important as well. Do not confuse the locations of the anterior commissure, posterior commissure, and habenular commissure. I'm going to bring the diagram one last time. One lies in the lamina terminalis, and one lies in the lower lamina of the pineal stalk, and one in the upper lamina, which is the habenular commissure. And that's it. Thank you very much. Good luck in your anatomy exams, and have a good day.